And what is going on right now in the world that you are following, reacting, thinking that makes you happy? Good news or bad news? What you are right now more occupying you?
It's mostly puzzling news.
Yeah.
Well, American politics is dominating everything here.
You are right. Yeah, we are basically, if you are watching
Obsessed
10 years later, 20 years later, this video, we are living surreal world right now under the Trump administration. We become so used to scandals, you know. Every day what it does could be a scandal, whole life of one president. But now it became insensitive towards all the lies and
every day
scandals and corruption. Very interesting.
But then we're in the middle right now of this process whereby the Democratic Party will select a candidate to be Trump's opponent in the elections in the fall. And that's a curious process itself. And so it dominates a lot of attention.
Yeah, it is also a very extraordinary fight between the progressive wing of the party and the also establishment.
Right.
Which is really, I do believe they are playing duopoly game, these two parties. They serve the same masters. One give lip service to religious and corporations, the other give lip service to the poor and ethnic groups. And by this way, but all usually, more or less with the margin of error, 3 plus, 3 minus, they follow the same guidance
I agree
by
with
corporations.
That,
yeah, they have been throughout. But I think right now the new generation got more information. They are fed up with this capitalism, what it caused. And to me, before even I heard from Bernie, I was saying it is crazy in any world universe that 3-person individual owns more wealth than 150 million people. It is incredible. It is basically... what to say, it is a pejorative for American people. You know, one American is 150 millionth of these 3 people, correct? You see, great Americans know. And capitalism seems to give too much for the person, but let's say 1 inch ahead of you. If it is number 1, then give it all the way kilometer distance, it get away with it. And creates so much inequality between haves and have-nots. Over-rewarding a little accomplishment. I mean the difference, the difference between accomplishments. For example, one of my students says, what if Bill Gates did not have? Well, do you think that is the only one came from the sky with parachute? Right. There are many brilliant people, they would do similar, less, or even more maybe better. He killed many good ideas too at the same time. Right. But he was a good businessman, better than find loopholes and stuff. Stole more money than the others from his working people perhaps. Or got lucky, but we are over-rewarding luck or little incremental, small differences.
We have no good way of talking about this stuff. We don't have the right language for it. I'll give you an example of what I mean.
Very interesting.
So one of the candidates now for the Democratic nomination for president is Michael Bloomberg. Bloomberg is a very successful businessman. He was the mayor of New York City for a number of years. His net wealth is somewhere around $68 billion.
Incredible amount of money.
$billion. So he's up there with the top 5, 6, 10, 15 people, something like that. And there was a debate last week among all of the candidates for the Democratic nomination, and Bloomberg was on the stage. And one of the moderators asked him the question directly, do you think you're entitled to that much money? Interesting question to ask the guy, right? And he said, yes. He said, I worked very hard and I earned it.
Wow.
Now, think about that for a second.
Yes, you earned it, but how?
Well, how? No, but even this is what I mean about not having the language. Like, how can you? So he's worth, you know, what? How many? You know, it's a billion times more than the rest of us, or a million times, 10 million times more than the rest of us. what does it mean to say he worked 10 million times harder
Exactly.
or did something to earn?
Or this many
10
million times smarter than
right,
everyone
or this many
else.
million times smarter. It's
IQ level
meaningless.
is million.
It's meaningless.
Yeah.
So, but when we use that language, we start to talk
Just
nonsense.
Exactly.
We
Exactly.
talk nonsense.
I agree.
But we don't have an alternative language
Yeah.
to talk. I mean, terminology, and so on. Even talk about.
I have
this.
written an article. There is no free market. They say free market.
Yeah.
No,
Right.
market is designed by people who really dominate the
Right.
market.
Yeah, there's no such
There are
thing.
rules. For example, bank can charge you legally. They can take away 35. If you overdraft, let's say 10 cents, they can charge you $35.
Yes.
They do it.
Yes.
Sometimes even subsequently.
Yes.
You purchase a, let's say, with your credit card or debit card you use, you get coffee, and then later you get a cookie. For each of them, let's say, the first one, it was overdraft, 10 cents. The other, $2. Then you got 35 for one and 35 another. $70 you charging someone who somehow made a mistake or did not have money or needed that, let's
Right.
say, water. He was very thirsty.
Right.
And the bank legally can
Yes.
take advantage of it. It
Well,
is
you sign that when you open the account.
but I know, but we are dependent on banks right now. We cannot really function a normal person without having an account with
It's
the
been
bank.
that way for a long time.
Yeah, therefore we become dependent, and then they take advantage of the most vulnerable one
Yes.
in the bottom. And in 2016 alone, 3 banks, Bank of America, I have to name their names. These are the robber banks. They rob the poor. And Bank of America, Chase, and Wells Fargo, they made $7 billion alone from overdraft.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't know that. Just from
alone.
overdrafts.
Overdraft alone, $7 billion, and these are the poorest of
Nice
people.
work if you can get it.
These are, yeah, I read out. Oh my God!
Lord.
These are only 3 banks. The others, they make basically siphon this money from poor people, and in fact, next week or maximum 2 weeks later, if that person is getting a paycheck, they will get their 10 cents and plus $35 from the money. Basically, it is 1 week they give loan, and they charge 10,000, 100,000% interest for that loan.
So it's not just
loan.
a fee. They treat it as if it were a loan to
It
pay
is-
off the
it's
thing,
in
and then
fact
they
loan.
charge interest
yeah,
on the
yeah.
loan.
It is fee, but in fact it is interest because they give you
Right.
10 cents extra, and then later 1 week later they get this 10 cents back, but they charge us $35 fee. Who decides this one? They made this law. Once happened to me. I have to say it now. Wells Fargo, when I was here new immigrant, I was student. I got married. And then one day I see in my account, I was working as a part-time jobs. In fact, I work in geology department, was studying philosophy.
Right.
Yeah, I also in restaurant, in cafeteria, university cafeteria, clean the tables, all those sorts. But once I saw about $2,000 in my checking account, I had some people I knew, they were well off, business person, and a few of them, in fact, they helped me out when I was marrying. I thought maybe one of them, but still I went to the bank. I asked, who is this person? Because the identity was not shown.
Right.
Well, says, we don't know, but someone put in your account. It's your account. I said, is there a mistake? No, 100%. They said, no mistake. And then here it is, about 1 month later, when I spend this money on bicycles or certain things that I wouldn't purchase, they say it was an error. We want back. Oh my gosh. And then I said, well, I came here and you told me it is not. It is someone put in my account. And then now you say it is error, but I purchased certain things I would never purchase because I didn't have money. Now you ask me, I have to pay penny to the penny. They didn't penalize themselves because they made that error.
Yeah, right.
Who is designing the law? Not us.
Right.
They are the making the laws. Therefore, it is really a corrupt rigged system.
This argument's been made many times over the last 150, 200 years.
Yeah. And also the movies, the films, or the programs on TV, also they support. I don't know whether it is deliberate or whether it is just because the culture created. Let's say the Survivor. One person survives, the rest dies. Or you become a billionaire. One person wins a millionaire. You want to become a millionaire.
Right.
And or lottery. justifies. One person with big amount of money that cannot even spend.
Right.
Yeah, doesn't know how to spend the money, go crazy. But the rest of the millions of people become losers. Through the games, also chance games on TV and stuff, they justify the idea that it is okay, it should be. One person wins, the rest losers.
Right.
And I think they reinforce this religion, this idea.
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it gets worse, I mean, more complicated, because the only way that kind of system functions in the end, I think, is by imposing it not only inside the country, but outside.
Yeah.
So you get this very extensive what the Pentagon people call a projection of power. Well, what's the power for? In the end, the power is to make sure that the system is set up so this kind of thing can happen, so that our companies can function abroad, so that people don't push back.
Of course, in fact, I say the heaven we have in this country, relative heaven, is due to the hells we create around the world.
That's correct.
Because there are a lot of imposition
Right, I agree with
of
that.
our corporation term, we exploit the resources of those countries.
Right.
And interestingly, when you have a war in a country, we get what? We get also brain drain from that country. We import brains. Let's say in Iran,
Yeah.
a lot of the best from Iran came here.
Right.
From Turkey, the same.
Right.
From around the world, that's very cunning. Therefore, if you create a chaos in a country, if you put a dictator on top of the country and later there is a trouble there, the best minds will escape where? Your country, you open that way. It's very,
because it's the most developed.
it is
right?
win-win.
It's win-win.
Yeah, it is very interesting.
And then they dress it all up with all this talk about freedom and rights and everything else. But it's unfortunately, too often, it's a lot of nonsense, I'm afraid. There's a famous occasion, it's a long time ago, 80 years ago anyway, during the 30s, when there was a very nasty dictator put into power in Nicaragua in Central America.
Mm-hmm.
It was his son who was later overthrown by the Sandinista revolutionaries in the late 70s. But the first Somoza, was put in the ban. He was a killer, and he was just an awful piece of work. But he was an American ally. Yep. And so the Americans are talking about, peace and justice and freedom and rights and everything else in Central America. And meanwhile, they're propping up this guy. And the famous line is, somebody challenged Franklin Roosevelt, Eleanor Roosevelt, FDR, on this. And Roosevelt's line is well known. He said, yeah, Somoza, he's a son of a bitch, but he's our son of a bitch.
It comes from him.
This comes from FDR, yeah.
Yeah,
He's about Somoza.
for Saddam Hussein, I used this one. He was RSOB.
For a while.
Yeah, for a while.
Until he wasn't.
Yeah.
And then he had to go.
Exactly.
Right, exactly.
United States used him against Iran
It's
and
an
then
old
disposed
story.
him.
It's an old story.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, but the line comes from FDR.
Oh.
It was about Somoza. Yeah.
Very
The son of a bitch, he's our son.
And that from here, I assume that hopefully Bernie will be. Do you have any kind of things that they will allow him to win the candidacy? I think if he gets the candidate, Dems candidate,
The Democrats are it's a very interesting situation there, and they will act in very undemocratic ways, I think, if they have to. If he actually wins enough delegates, then he'll get the nomination. It'll be very difficult to stop him. But if he doesn't win enough delegates,
I think they will play the game. They will.
Well, but they have a way to stop it.
Yeah.
And the way is the Democrats, unlike the Republicans, interestingly enough, it's a great irony here. The Democrats have a group of people they call superdelegates.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about 500 and something votes out of 2,000. So it's a lot. It's a huge percentage. And the way this will work is that if at the convention in the summer, which is in July or August sometime, at the convention, if they don't, if the participants in the convention don't select a candidate in the first ballot, first time around, if somebody doesn't get a majority of the delegates, then the superdelegates become relevant, and they will all be opposed to him because
they're controlled by the DNC.
Right. So then they'll stop him. But so he has to have he has to have a majority of the delegates in order to get this nomination. But then the question is, even if he gets the nomination, I think he can handle himself perfectly well against Trump. I don't think that's a problem.
But the NC may secretly work against him.
Well, yeah, they may rather have Trump than him.
Yeah,
that's quite
so.
possible.
Yeah.
But even if he gets elected, I don't see how he's going to govern, because he'll have the mainstream of the Democratic Party against him and the entirety of the Republican Party against him. And I don't think how he's going to be able to do anything. Even if he gets elected.
How Trump did to Republican Party, they became a cult of Trump.
They did, right. So, and the other, it's possible that the Democrats could do the same thing, but what would it take? And I think the following is a possible scenario, that they can come to him. See, what bothers them even more than the socialism part of this, and it's not really socialism anyway, it's kind of social democracy. Right, it's not really socialism. He's not arguing for the ownership of the means of production.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not
conflate.
socialism. Right. He calls it democratic social, but it's really social democracy. They can live with that. This is my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. I think they can live with that. What they can't live with is undoing the imperialism around the world.
Exactly, I think
so. They could do the following: cut a deal with him, and they'll say to him,
"Okay, healthcare,
you can have that stuff, but don't interfere with
military industrial.
Yeah, leave the rest of that." Right.
Yeah,
and he might buy that deal.
Yeah, I do have the same fear. Yeah, exactly. Good, I think, observation. Yeah.
So who knows? All of this is very interesting at this point.
And that's interesting. The military-industrial complex have also worked very strategically. If you look at in states, most of the states, they have some factories.
Yeah, jobs are at stake. And
by this way, the candidate in that state will have difficulty to go against, because will create a constituency already very vested interest in military.
That's right.
And therefore, I think to work again, to do something against, a politician must come with a promise to working people in the industry. We'll give you job guarantee until you die.
Right.
The word death. And then, honestly, but we would like to, some of you, we need, of course, military for defense, but we are overdoing for offenses. And therefore, we will cut it in half, maybe, or even more, and then you will be you will be
retrained, or
you will be going to teach, let's say, tutor high school kids, work in city and municipality.
It takes a lot of money to organize something.
You will be doing constructive work rather than destructive work, because we bomb countries, we create even more enemies to us. It is a vicious cycle. It's self-perpetuating. Perpetual machine.
The military industrial complex it gets a lot of energy from outside. It's not perpetual.
No, this way. Perpetual bloody machine, because when you bomb, kill people, and they become your enemy, they come to you, and you say, here we have enemies and terrorists, we need to make it bigger and bigger.
And you used up the bomb, so you have to buy some more.
Yes, it is. You're right. In that regard, it is not perpetual.
Right.
But it is a bloody, very heinous machine. Therefore, if you get this consumer comfortable, okay, you will not use your job, your money, salary. The only way that you will do some better work in the society, contribution, and I think by this way we may not lose their votes.
Maybe, but it would be very difficult to get anybody to believe you could actually do that, because that would be immensely expensive. Do you know?
No. How would you say what is the expensive? Listen, you are paying them money to create bomb that will explode. It's not edible, the bomb. You don't eat it, you don't use it. It is not a toy. It is going to bomb. And we don't need so many bombs.
You mean, so you take money you would be spending here and you put it over here? And
because he's already an engineer in use. Okay, you are an engineer, you are making up something that explodes. Instead, make something cheese. Make cheese. Go to a cheese factory.
I read the other day, there's a story in Fox News I read online. Fox News of all places. They did a kind of survey of the most powerful militaries in the world, and they listed the top 5. And not surprisingly, the United States was the top. I think Russia, China, India, and Japan were the next.
No.
Yes, that was. I'm just describing the story.
No,
those were the 5.
Okay.
U.S., Russia, China, India, and Japan.
Okay.
And the interesting thing was that if you take the bottom four, you know, Russia through Japan, add up everything they're spending in dollars, the U.S. is spending almost double what the others
all
put together.
Combined together.
Yes.
You're right. And of course, but France, Germany, UK,
Well, there's more.
they
There's
are
that stuff too.
they
Right.
weapon manufacturers
Yes.
in terms of
Yeah, Russians are too.
yeah, you're right.
Kalashnikov.
Yeah, exactly. These countries, their spending is much less than U.S.
Much. And but
Combined.
they're combined.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. So there's a lot of money out there they could use for these other things. You're right.
Yeah.
It could be rechanneled.
Yeah, when you rechannel it, you don't need to have extra
Right,
money.
you don't
In
need
fact,
extra, right.
Whatever budget, part of the budget, you
Right.
can do it, and then with time, they will be retiring and stuff, and you will have less
Yeah.
money there.
You can imagine the screams in Congress and all over the place about how
Patriotism, waving flags.
endangering the,
Exactly.
the health of the country and blah blah.
There was a recent WikiLeaks. Just I read an article, the titles of the article, not all article, but this Assange WikiLeaks released so many documents starting from 1979, I believe, about CIA, and they claim that CIA helped ISIS, creation of ISIS. This is the claim, but I did it in 2014 in my tweets. This is my observation, and I do think that there is a certain plan. Of course, not one source. There was already culture, religion, and traumatized people out there, but I do believe there was some help or ignoring them so that they grow and they become magnet, attract radicals from the West,
Right.
collect them there and eliminating them.
They did help create the
Al-Qaeda.
groups that became the Taliban and Al Qaeda.
Yeah, of course.
in the Afghan battle against the Soviet Union in the late 70s.
It's called
80s.
backlash, correct?
Yeah.
But this one, I think, of course, directly it is the byproduct of the invasion and killing about 1 million people in Iraq,
Right.
tortures there led. But I do think there was one way enjoying that stuff, because I remember when they were going in convoys on Toyotas with their weapons, waving their flags, the black flag. No one touched them. They were going in thousands. Meanwhile, they were killing. And the United States could, you don't see it, and they didn't touch them. But when allowed them to become magnet, and on social media, they did all sorts of propaganda and attracted from West all their radicals. And this is, I think, was the plan, to like mosquitoes. You pull them to some place, and then you destroy them there.
Maybe I really don't know.
Yeah, I know this.
I have no idea. I mean, the American policy in that part of the world has been chaotic in recent decades, but they do want to destroy the Shia powers. So Iran, but also Assad in Syria and the others in Lebanon.
Well, it is
so they're trying to it's Israel's policy as well, right?
Yeah.
It's part of it. So they want to destroy all that. They may have thought ISIS could help them do that.
Yeah, I do.
That's quite possible.
Of course, for Syria, they wanted to divide Syria, and then they used Turkey too.
Right.
Through Saudi Arabia and Qatar,
Yes.
these two gave billions of dollars to Turkey, and Turkey used that money to promote Erdogan as great kind of reformed economy and stuff. It was basically money coming from that. And then Erdogan for years smuggled weapons and psychopaths to Syria to basically divide Syria through civil war, and couldn't.
Right.
Yeah,
It's also why they were supporting Saudi Arabia in that war in Yemen, because they're trying to.
Oh my gosh! I witnessed the very corruption of United States through Saudi Arabia in Turkey. After Iran's revolution, my father was top religious clergyman in Turkey at that time.
Is that right?
Yeah, top. And then in Iran, after revolution, the Sunni world, first time in their history, they empathize and sympathize with Shiites. First time in about 1400 years.
Right.
And this alarmed the United States. They see Iranian revolution basically is anti-American, anti-imperialist.
Right.
And here it is, the Sunni majority people in Egypt, in Saudi Arabia, in everywhere. And Muslim Brotherhood issued sympathies to Khomeini. And it was unforeseeable.
I didn't remember that.
Yeah. And also Syria, because they so much hostile, they were religiously, theologically, they were rejecting Shiites, even not considered as Muslims.
Right.
And because of this revolution, it was so popular in the world, this basically destroyed those walls, created friendship. And what did the United States do? Two things. One is for short term and the other long term. The short term, he purchased leaders, religious and political leaders in these countries. I remember when I was still Sunni in my father's home, always the member of Congress, president of parties would come to our home, or very leading people. And two people came from Saudi Arabia, Rabitatul Alam al-Islam, the network of Muslim world, so-called, corrupt, very corrupt organization. They came to our home, and that time I would serve the guests, sometimes participate in discussion. In Arabic, they told my father, they said, King, that time I think King Faisal had greetings to you, admires your work. I think it was a big lie. King Faisal was a stupid guy in his luxurious life, spoiled. And then he said, admires your work, wants to support you, and has a gift for you, and also wants to have a salary for you, monthly. And my father, though he was religiously misguided, later we fell apart, but he was a very honest, honorable person, never we were living in poverty, we were counting honestly olives, but my father could become very rich, we could have luxurious life, lavish life. He would reject. And he said, tell my greetings to your king, I don't need money. And but I know that other leaders, religious and political leaders, were purchased because they were pro-Iran, and then suddenly 180 degrees they changed anti-Iran. And I know some of them got very rich afterwards.
It's hard to resist that.
Yeah, this is exactly how Saudi Arabia worked for United States.
Still
it is a corrupting force in that. Israel in one way, and very interesting. Now, my question about Israel, I'm not sure whether Israel is governing, is leading, or United States is using Israel. Which one is using whom?
They each think they're using the other.
Yes.
That's how I think of it.
Yes.
And the rest of them are in this
symbiotic relationship.
The rest of them are in an interesting position too. And I spent 4 years as a provost of university in the Emirates, in the northern emirate of Ras Al Khaimah. And when I was first there interviewing for the job, the president of the university took me to the Sheikh's palace for lunch with the Sheikh. And so we met His Highness and blah, blah, blah. I don't know if we went to lunch. And I have a problem of not knowing when to keep my mouth shut, usually, sometimes.
That's good.
Yeah, well, that's sometimes. But in this case, I didn't keep it shut. I probably should have, but I was okay. But at that time, so this was when? This was just about 8 years ago, because it was 2012, around this time of year. Something was going on with Iran and Israel and so on. And the Emirates were very much anti-Iranian. So anyway, they were lining up with Israel. And so I'm sitting here having my fish, and His Highness is sitting here, the Sheikh, and we're talking, and we started to talk about foreign affairs, and I said something. I said, well, this must be very difficult for you guys, because here you are aligned with Israel. What do you make of that?
Yeah. How can you sell to your people?
Right. And he didn't stop eating. He just sort of looked over at me and he said, it's complicated. No kidding, Sherlock. It's complicated. That was it. I didn't push it, but that was. I mean, they knew what they were doing.
I love this Bernie Sanders. He is the first one as a candidate of major party lost in 2016. he didn't go to IPAC. He was critical
Right.
of IPAC.
He still
And
is.
now he did, but others also followed. Now the other candidates,
Right.
several of them,
Yeah.
did not. First time I see IPAC was the Goliath. It's called
Right.
how do you say it?
Goliath.
Goliath. I say it
It's-
wrong.
well, I know
Goliath.
it's a Aramaic word or
Yeah, Goliath.
so I don't know how it's properly
Yeah.
pronounced.
Yeah.
It was David and
Goliath.
somebody. Or
Yeah, he's the Goliath
Yeah.
lobby, pretending to
Oh
be
yes,
David.
yeah. Pretending to be David. Yeah, that's right.
David is Bernie Sanders. Therefore, I
Right.
support the
Yes, the
David.
world's turned upside down.
Yeah. It's an interesting change. You know, let me tell you one of my experience with the academic system. Years ago, when I graduated from law school, I wanted to teach in Near Eastern Studies department. And then I applied few, I got rejection. And without my knowledge, without my application, a professor, the head of the department in Texas University out at Austin, Professor Kurzman, he knew about my work, some of my books. He in fact has written a book about liberal Islam, and therefore he knew about my work. He called me, he said, Edip, there is a position here opening, assistant professorship position. This is what I'm telling you about 25 some years ago, 20 some years ago. And then he said, I would like to have you there in our department. I'm the head of the department. Your resume will be perfect. Just send me a resume and then we'll have you here. Okay, I said. I didn't have much hope, but I sent it to him. And then about a month later, he called me. He said, I'm very sorry, but I couldn't hire you. What happened? He says, well, we have two major wings. One is Judaic studies, the other is Islamic studies. Both group, they get a lot of funding from different countries.
Right.
And then the first opposition came from Jews. They knew some of your work critical of Israel. And they opposed. And I said, I hope that I may be able to have the other wing and maybe get the vote. In fact, they oppose even more. The Saudi, Kuwaiti, Emirates, all these Qatari. And then therefore I was alone on your side. I couldn't. That is exactly how it works.
That's how it works.
And also about my translation of the Quran. This one. This one in 2007 I finished. Macmillan.
Oh, you told me about this. They were going to publish it.
Yeah.
And they,
oh, did I?
Yeah,
Okay. Palgrave, they will publish, and at the last moment, an unknown person, an honest person, gave a negative feedback, scared them with Salman Rushdie's, and they dropped. And therefore, I think even in this country, in the background, they are secretively they do certain harm, block some.
Probably.
Yeah.
Well, they all, using whatever
Not 100%.
limited
I'm
power
not
they
giving
have.
them.
Right.
I'm not
Right.
giving them too much power. In my case,
Right.
I didn't have much really means. Therefore, but sometimes they can.
I have a similar story, though, quite a bit less dramatic than that, about one of my books and running into trouble with reviewers. Because I don't know if I told you this. I had spent, in the 80s, I spent 2 different semesters as a visiting professor at Moscow State University, so in Soviet times. And one of my academic specializations is the history of American philosophy. So when I was first at MGU, Moscow State University, that was a little over 35 years ago now, I discovered that there was a huge amount of literature written by Soviet specialists on the history of American philosophy that no one in the U.S. knew anything about, because it was all in Russian and it was all for internal. Did I tell you this story?
I remember.
Well, I need to go over it again.
Yeah.
But I ended up writing a book about Soviet studies of the history of American philosophy so I read most of that literature, whatever I could find, and kind of, wrote the view. It's called Interpreting America. Wrote the view of the U.S. from that point of view. But one of the when the book was being sent out to reviewers. The manuscript sent out to reviewers. One of the reviewers wrote that this is just dreadful and shouldn't be published. And the basic problem was that the people who I was writing about weren't supposed to exist.
Oh my God!
Because the American propaganda, the Western propaganda, was that there were only two kinds of academics in the socialist world: either dissidents or Stalinist hacks. And these guys were neither. They were normal scholars, and they weren't dissidents.
Yeah.
So they weren't supposed to exist. And here's a whole book talking about their work.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Very interesting.
Fortunately, it got published.
I'm going to stop this camera. I will divide it into two pieces.
Yeah, that's a long one. Right?
Yeah, it divided. There was a
everybody.
political part, and there is also some light about children philosophy. Today is fiction and art and films.
Yeah.
This is 29th of February 2020. In case the beginning of this we don't have the date, I want to leave date.
Right.
And do you have any words to these people who are watching?
I hope this isn't too boring.
Well,
Maybe we'll see you again.
They
They can turn it off. It's boring, right?
Yeah, they can stop watching.